Hello AoS fans, and welcome to our final part of our look at the Warhammer Age of Sigmar Soulbound role-playing games, Archetypes. It's a bit of a mouthful there, but yes, this is part 3 of our look at Archetypes. In part 1 we had a general look at the Archetypes and the Archetypes of the Free Peoples. Number 2 was devoted entirely to all the other races archetypes, and this video, which should be fairly short, is a look at the Stormcast Eternals. Stormcast Eternals set themselves apart slightly from the rest of the archetypes because they do not form part of the binding. They are already bound to Sigmar in the lore, and so they are separate and they cannot form part of the binding party. So it'd be interesting to see how they balance and how they play. They are very strong, as we will see in a moment. And of course the other thing about them is that they can be reforged, which has some interesting role-playing applications, as well as meaning that technically speaking you can't be killed. It also means you may have already had several lifetimes before sort of being part of the adventure, and also with each iteration of Stormcast then the memories and things like that and your psyche kind of degrade, which has interesting applications, although it does mention that a reforging can take a very long time. So it's entirely possible that if you do die, even though you'll be reforged, you would no longer take part in the campaign. It's not like Jumanji, where you'd fall out of the sky and land next to your PCs and carry on playing. We dig into the Stormcast themselves. It's probably worth noting that there is definitely going to be an impact on the group and the role-playing dynamic, and you might have to think carefully about who you allow to be your Stormcast players. Potentially, I don't know, it's going to depend on your group and how sort of fervently you adhere to this little section here called Regarding the Soulbound, which basically states when the Stormcast are found to be a member of a group of Soulbound, there's invariably a reason for it. Sometimes they're assigned to assist a specific quest, or they've been asked to aid the Stormcast. So you've almost got this kind of superior subordinate situation going up. The Stormcast are held in higher regard by the rest of the world than the rest of the Soulbound, which could potentially cause a problematic dynamic. I know in my long-standing role-playing group that certain characters would not take well to having a mentor within the group, or certainly other characters would not take well if they were the mentor, so you'd have to balance that very carefully. And then it goes on to say that Stormcast Eternals have a wildly varying viewpoints on the Soulbound, many of which are somewhat tinged by how often they've worked alongside them, when that makes some sense, and that bond will be forged as the party continues. Some regard them as heroes, fellow heroes, but others are wary, wondering why they weren't made Stormcast. So you kind of, again, you've got an interesting dynamic building up there, which you're going to have to consider when playing the game. So with all that said, let's have a look at the Stormcast Eternals. So we'll start with the Knight Azyros. Herald of Azyr, you bring Sigmar's light to the lower realms. Well, the Azyros remind me of the Greek god Hermes. They have that fleet of foot winged messenger vibe. Now, looking at the stats, the first thing you'll notice, and this is true of all the Stormcast, is that they add up to 9. That's a full 2 pips greater than any of the Free Peoples, and most of the other races too. The Daughters of Cain were 8, but all of the Stormcast are 9. This guy, the Azyros, have 3 in body, 2 in mind, and 4 in soul. So they're a bit more of a spiritual nature, not quite so combative as maybe some of the others. And their core skill is devotion, as you might expect. There are fairly standard stats, really. They're not terribly interesting. They do have Miracles of Sigmar to choose from in their talents, but everything is all about Sigmar. Their core talent is Blessed, their devotion, and they have things like theology. They don't have any ballistic skills, but they do of course have weapon skill, and they're very intimidating, perhaps not surprisingly. Their equipment is Sigmarite plate and a Starblade sword. They have celestial wings and a celestial beacon, which is their holy symbol, and they use that really to shed the light of Sigmar into the murky depths of the mortal realms. It says in their little blurb that they can be the diplomatic face of a hardened Soulbound, which is kind of interesting. So I guess that reflects that their soul is quite strong. They are the kind of PR face, maybe, if you like, of Sigmar, which is kind of interesting, because I'm not sure, I didn't know he had one. But they'll be an interesting addition to a party, although in and of themselves I don't find that interesting. They are obviously, they have a job to do, and they look like they fulfill that job very well, but there's not much variation there of many other things we've seen in the game. They're just slightly stronger. Next up we have the Knight Incantor, warrior mystics, holy crusaders with the storms of the celestial realm at your fingertips. So these are effectively magic stormcast. They have spellcasting abilities. They have 3 body, 4 mind, 2 soul. So strength of mind as you would expect for a spellcaster, and of course their core skill is channeling. They have Arcana and beast handling as some of their skills, and determination, intuition, and they do have weapon skill, so they can still wield this. These guys are basically Stormsire from the Cursebreakers, for those of you who play Warhammer Underworlds. Core talents. They have celestial spellcasting, so they only have access to the celestial spells. Their talents include Forbidden Knowledge, Iron Will, Potent Spells, which sounds pretty cool, Scholar and Witch Sight, and they can only choose 2 of those because they do have their core talents of spellcasting and unbind, like all the other wizards. Equipment, they have some Sigmarite plate, which is interesting. Obviously, traditionally wizards couldn't have armour, but obviously there's no problem in this game, and the Stormcast clearly are pretty much all armour, so there's clearly not a problem there. They have a quarterstaff, a dagger, a sort of tabard, a grimoire, a scroll case, and they have 240 drops of Aqua Granis. Next we have the Knight Questor, a champion of the Celestial Realm charged with the holy duty by the God King himself. So these guys kind of wander around the mortal realms on sort of secret missions or important missions that they have to fulfill, and the Soulbound can help them along their way. In many ways, the Knight Questors are probably the most interesting or the most likely people to team up with a Soulbound, whether they're going to be helping Soulbound on a quest, which is extremely important, or whether they've recruited the Soulbound to help them on a quest is really important. That's really important to Sigmar, of course, is kind of part of the narrative and the storytelling, and of course it could be either and switch around, I suppose. Let's have a look at their stats. They have a body of 4, a mind of 2, soul of 3. They're the kind of scouts of the Stormcast Eternal world, and they have the body to match, as it were. They go out questing. They need to be strong in battle, and they have core talent of heroic challenge. Their core skill is weapon skill, and they have things like athletics and determination and fortitude. No bow skill. They're not scouts in the true sense of the or traditional sense of the word. They do have Rawk. I don't know why I call it that, but that's how we pronounce it on Warhammer Underworld. So Sigmar's Rawk, clearly a important aspect of their nature, their kind of defensive and their stoic, unbeatable nature, and combat ready, and they also have guts. And then they have Sigmarite Warplate, which is heavy armour, and they can either have a Questa Warblade or a shield or any 2-handed melee weapon, a cloak, a pendant. They only have 65 drops of Aqua Granis. I don't know how they came up with the amounts of Aqua Granis that each set of people have, but they only have 65. The final Stormcast archetype you can be is a Knight Venator. And Lord of the Skies, you're an expert archer who strikes from above. Possibly the most impressive of the Stormcast in appearance is the Knight Venator, and as you might expect as their archers, their core skill is ballistic skill. They have 9 XP to spend on things like athletics and awareness and ballistic skill, determination, dexterity, weapon skill as well. They can have stealth and survival. So these really do look like more like the old Rangers of old. So although I said the Knight Questers with the Scouts, in some ways these are more like Scout in terms of their skill set. They're very much more like the old sort of Elven Rangers, how I imagine them, how I used to actually like to play Ranger type characters. And so they're more, although they have not really a Ranger at all in appearance, with their sort of being able to fly in the sky kind of thing with the Star Eagle, they're more like the traditional Rangers of old. Their skills are, their core skill is ballistic skill. They have athletics and they have awareness, and then they have beast handling because they have their Star Eagles. Their core talent is their loyal companion. They can add weapon skill to their skills, and they have things like reflexes and stealth. So yeah, very much the old style Scout Ranger skill set. Their talents, they can choose combat ready and hunter and orientation, and again, so this all kind of ties in with what I've been saying about the old Scout makeup. They do have Star Fated Arrow, which sounds pretty cool. They're in their equipment. They can have Sigmarite Plate, a Realm Hunter's Bow, and a Quiver of Arrows, a Storm Gladius, which is a sword, and Celestial Wings, which is kind of flying under the radar, if you excuse the expression, for how they fly. Mentioned in their description that they could fly, and it's the Celestial Wings gives them a flight speed of normal. There's no skill or anything that involves flying. It's literally just that they have this equipment, the Celestial Wings. They get 90 drops of Aqua Gyranis. So they're quite interesting. The star-fated arrow means they can shoot people from afar with accuracy, and they've got the Star Eagles, which kind of do the same thing, very similar to Fast Riders. If those, again, for those of you who play Warhammer Underworlds, our regular viewers, watch about a lot of our Warhammer Underworld stuff. So that's it. There are the 4 Stormcast archetypes for the game, and actually they're pretty standard, aren't they? You've got a kind of clericy one, you've got a wizardy one, you've got a combaty one, and you've got a kind of rangery archery one. So nothing too earth-shattering there. I'm just kind of interested to see how they're going to play out. I can see over a long period of time, one player, being the Stormcast Eternal, could get a bit annoying. Perhaps I haven't really dug deep into the mechanics yet, so perhaps there are checks and balances in there. I almost feel like in some ways one way to play it, and I don't know how this will quite work with the soul binding, would be to have for one adventure or one sort of part of a campaign that one player plays the Stormcast, and then on a particular mission, and the next one you swap out a character and they play the Stormcast, so that not all one person is playing the kind of celestial being who is bigger and stronger than most of the other players. Perhaps it doesn't play out that way, I don't know. I can definitely see all the appeal of playing a Stormcast. I do kind of like them, and I do find Games Workshop's over-reliance on them a little bit frustrating. But I do kind of like them as a concept, at least, because I suppose I did like the Empire, and I do always kind of like beings of order, because that's what I'm like. But I do have reservations about them fitting into a role-playing scene or a player character party with other people trying to do normal things. I guess your reaction will be very different to you if you're stomping around the world with a Stormcast Eternal in tow. But they're definitely interesting. It would definitely be fascinating to try and play them. I don't know if you could have a whole party made up of Stormcast. That could be quite interesting and potentially amusing if you had people so inclined. I could certainly think of some amusing situations that could occur with a party complete full with Stormcast. But that's it. That's the archetypes, and I have to say it's quite a fascinating way of looking at the game. Interesting, kind of very defined archetypes. Yet you can create these kind of shades of grey within them to give you a whole kind of continuum of player character types. And of course you can, once you dig deeper into the game, you can change things around a little bit to your own desire with discussion with the GM to give yourself even more flexibility. So that's it for my archetype overview. I hope you've enjoyed it. I appreciate some of it might be teaching Grandma to suck eggs, but I hope you've enjoyed watching them, and I will do more videos in the near future. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do yet. I want to do something about talents and skills, but not in quite the detail here. I think probably my initial plan here was a bit too detailed, so we'll try and cut down on the detail and kind of just do a more broader overview. And I would like to do some character generation stuff to actually how the process works, but that time and may not allow for that, but we'll see. So anyway, I do hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how you're getting on with Soulbound. Let me know if you any more content you want to see, and I will do my best to fulfill that. If you have enjoyed the content, then please do like and subscribe to the channel. Do come and find us on Facebook. I'd love to chat over there. There's not very much Soulbound chat over there at the moment, so if you do want to come over and talk to us about it, that would be great. But until we do see you again, or you'll listen to our next video, take care and goodbye.